Welcome back to another episode of Making the Hardest Game on Steam. Sklime is a game where you use the two joysticks of a controller to control two arms of your character. This makes it one of the hardest games on Steam. And with Jump King Quest releasing in early access today, I thought I'd do a special Jump King themed video. So this is actually something I started a couple years back when I was testing out the Sklime character controller. I tried playing Jump King's level to see how it felt, but I only ended up doing the first couple zones, so there's a long way to go still. Starting off, I have this editor script that shows the outline of colliders even when they're not selected. I just use onDraw gizmos to draw some gizmos according to their colliders. I only set it up for circles, box colliders, and polygon colliders so far because that's all I used. I'll put the source code for this file in the description. I also had this script generated which lets me snap the points of a polygon collider along the parallels of other points when holding shift. Here's what that looks like. You can adjust the snap distance in the script, which will also be in the description. And aside from this, it's pretty easy to remake the level. All you have to do is make a material for the slippery slanted edges and a material for the regular collisions. I also have tags to decide whether the player can make a joint on the platform or jump on them. I went with the friction value of 0.01. It's very slippery, but you can still get a bit of friction for a jump. I started off doing the slanted colliders from the start with just these box colliders rotated. These colliders use a special material with zero friction, so it's hard to get any sort of momentum off of them. The rest of the mechanics I needed for Jump King I more or less already had completed from Sklime. I already have the different zone switching mechanics, where you just show a big title at the top if you've never been to the zone before, or a small one in the bottom left if you've been there already. And Sklime has recoloring mechanics already, so I just took the existing color presets, made some new ones, and took the colors from Jump King. I also set patterns for each zone, so I set the ones that I thought matched the best. I also adjusted the stars here to be a lot smaller, added a lot more, and made them brighter. This uses Unity's VFX graph, so I can do thousands of particles on the GPU with no lag. And honestly, you can do a whole lot more than that. This is a couple 100,000. You can see where they wrap. These are too many now. And aside from that, basically the last thing I had to add was this cycling wind, which in Sklime actually lets you climb on the walls. But I actually made this a long time ago in an older version of the game, back when it still looked like this. I had some sections where you'd climb up these vertical areas, waiting for the wind cycles. And I had to make the edges very sharply slanted so you couldn't climb up them. I set this up the sort of stupid way where you make the sprite about 3 times its size and then just manually wrap it around. There are definitely better ways to do it. To control the speed over time, I use an animation curve, and it basically reads forward over the animation curve, and then afterward it will loop back around reading backward and back and forth. And to be honest, that's all you need for Jump King. That and many hours of just placing these colliders, because this took forever. All in all, it is something you can sort of do in one day, so I would say it definitely can be worth the time if you're looking to just test your character controller. There's a lot to be learned from Jump King's map, and it can also encourage you to make new tools to work on your game faster. After playing through Blue Ruin with the Sklime character, it got me thinking about some new cool sections to add focused around more slippery platforms. With all that being said, let's take a look at the final result. The Red Crowned Woods are pretty easy overall. They just require a couple key vertical wall jumps that can be tricky to get. But other than that, it's a pretty standard platforming section with a lot of wall jumps. My favorite part has to be how they integrated this tree into the background, which can be quite fun to climb. 2 stars. Colossal Drain ends up being more like Colossal Pain because of how hard it is to travel through these sections that have such small entrances. I had to sit here retrying these wall jumps over and over to get up some of them. The other difficult part about this is probably just this long jump under the pipe and then back across, which you can do in Sklime because you can go really far horizontally. The rest of the zone is pretty straightforward up until this one jump right here. It requires a nice vertical wall jump to get up. Also 2 stars. Taking you into another claustrophobic zone, False King's Keep. which isn't actually hard at the start. You just have to find the right path up until this wall jump up here. It can be very precise. You need a good wall jump off of this slanted surface to make it all the way up to the upper right section here. The rest of the zone is pretty easy. Believe it or not, also 2 stars. Now Bargainburg is where things finally start getting actually tricky. With these slanted roofs that are very slippery, there's basically no way to get up unless you can launch yourself off of one of these roofs. I have to get creative in a couple locations because I can't jump nearly as high as you can in Jump King. But eventually I do get enough momentum to launch myself up and barely wall climb through that, which takes you right up to the next difficult part of the zone, a spot where you have to get a very precise wall jump going very high upward. You finish the zone off with quite a few more claustrophobic spaces. Especially right up here, this house is terrible. You have to do 3 of these jumps in a row, and it can get hard to even get through once. I think this is the most narrow jump that you have to do in the game, so this will probably be a big filter for some players if they could play it. And because of that, I'll actually be giving this zone a 3-star rating. Onto the Great Frontier, which has to be the greatest difficulty spike in the entire map. Even these more regular sections are rather difficult. You have to get some pretty precise wall jumps to get up. But the real fun starts just above this section. Out of everything in the run, this by far took the most amount of time. Looking from the top of this hut, you can see there's basically no way to get this platform. It looks completely impossible. Try going for some wall jumps off the right side, nothing works. Off the left side, looks like you can't get it. But it turns out you just have to do Sklime's most difficult tech, which is a double vertical wall jump. But this one has to be extremely vertical, getting up to this platform because you have such little space to go through. And if that wasn't bad enough, you have to go for another vertical wall jump directly after, which is chained into another precision wall jump, all above this section that has a huge risk of falling into redoing a chain of many difficult jumps in a row. Needless to say, I fell here again. I took my time carefully getting back to this spot and managed to get a good wall jump. The next difficult spot is just above here at these huts, where it looks almost impossible once again. There's not enough space to go through the hut on the right, and it looks like there's no way you're getting to the platform all the way on the left. After a long time of trial and error, I eventually found this one jump you could do, which is off of the roof of the hut on the very right, which barely lets you jump all the way over to the platform on the left. From here it's still a bit tricky, but you can just barely make your way up between these huts. I'm sure it's still really easy to mess up here and fall, sacrificing a ton of progress. But if you're careful and you go for these low jumps under the roofs, which are a lot more precise than you'd think in Sklime, you can make it to the top. I give this zone a 5-star rating. Next up is the Stormwall Pass, which is insanely difficult. I'm just kidding, this zone is a complete joke in Sklime. You can just walk on the walls with the wind and make your way up, no problem. Well, until you get to this part. I said the narrowest thing you have to go through was back in Bargainburg, but that was wrong. It's actually this stupid hole here. You can't even wall jump through it at all. I tried a ton and I couldn't get it. And it took me a while to realize, but you can sort of do this walk through it if you put one arm in front of the other and slowly crawl through the hole. Learn this tech from the Chasm Zone in the Nightmare map. 1 star. Now onto the Chapel Zone, there basically isn't anything interesting in it. All the jumps are pretty simple and there's maybe one hard wall jump, if you even consider this hard, which I don't. But it's more of a safe zone after you get through most of the game. It ends off with one kind of difficult jump because I can't go straight up to the upper right here. So I have to make this long wall jump, going into a slippery platform, so I have to get up on top of it even, which takes a few tries to get used to, but overall it's not so bad. I'll give it a 1 star. It could be 1.5 though. Blue Ruin definitely has to be my favorite zone in Sklime King, but it's also sadly quite short. Platforms are very slippery, so it can be difficult to get a max force jump off of them. The walls still have friction, so that's the one way you can get up. And I actually have to take an alternative route here because there's no way that I can get up to that right side. So you basically have to do this crazy wall jump maneuver on these two very slippery pillars. I did fall here in the original playthrough, but managed to make my way up the second try. This next jump isn't too bad if you can make it over to the other side without falling off, which I almost do a few times here, but eventually I managed to make it over without falling. And I get the wall jump sequence. This last part of Blue Ruin is one of the hardest parts of the map, but I eventually found this jump off of the corner of this ice block on the left that lets me get a nice wall jump sequence into the tower. I'd give this zone a 3 stars, maybe 4 if it was a bit longer. Now on to the final zone, the tower. The issue with this zone is it's just not clear what you're supposed to do at all. It requires these max distance jumps in Jump King, which the slime just can't do at all. On the bright side, the slime can just jump back and forth on the walls a lot, so I end up having to take a route outside of the tower pretty often. Eventually I try the jump off of the slippery block on the right, which lets you get up to another confusing section, where you can't just do a regular jump to the platform in front of you, and instead you have to do a wall jump off of the back wall. All that's left now is some somewhat precise wall jumps, but overall not too bad. You can get up to the very last section, which has these 2 blocks. You just have to try to get up over and over to get through this narrow space so you can go and see the smoking hot babe at the top. Three stars, by the way. Maybe 2.5. Thanks for watching until the end of the video. You can watch a full playthrough of the map by clicking on the video on screen now. If you're interested in Sklime, please check it out on Steam, it's currently on sale. I can't make this level public, but I did just release a new challenge map for Sklime that so far only one person has beat. I'll have videos on that coming out shortly. And thank you to my Patreon supporter.